yes, it can actually be great to move your body in a way that doesn't involve running 1,000 miles on the treadmill. Find movement that brings you joy. Find movement that lights you up. If we stay stuck, then we also are perpetrating an environment which can be the great breeding ground for disease and ailments and illnesses. That's not sustainable. And that's not how, your body's listening. All right, well, welcome. This week we are talking all about movement and really about how there is no one set and specific way of moving that is right or wrong, but really how you are uniquely bio-individual and how to find that movement that feels good for you, and also why you may actually be more favored and lean towards specific types of movement than others. So I really look forward to sharing this with you. So let's dive in. Welcome to Resonance, a podcast for ambitious, heart-led humans craving more balance, depth, and aliveness in their lives. I'm your host, Vic, health coach, yoga teacher, facilitator, and fellow high achiever, learning to live in tune with my nervous system, not against it. And this space is here to remind you that you can have it all. The career, the success, the fulfillment, all aligned with your truth. Through honest conversations, expert insights, and practical tools, we'll explore how to work with your body, mind, emotions, and spirit, not against them. And the best part, you don't have to stay stuck in survival mode to get there. Because true well-being is not about being perfect. It's about being in resonance. Let's dive in. The episode today was inspired by a conversation I had with someone who is really into intense types of movement, like BFT, CrossFit, let's go. And I was explaining to them why that is not for me. And I was like, oh, you know what? Actually, a lot of people don't talk about this. So it might be something that you would enjoy to hear. So let's dive in, because I'm sure you would love to hear that, yes, it can actually be great to move your body in a way that doesn't involve running 1,000 miles on the treadmill, lifting weights nonstop all the time at the gym, or doing that weird prescription routine that your PT gave you 6 years ago. Okay, so let's dive in. Let's just talk about moving your body. I, as a health coach, have worked with many clients who have struggled with incorporating movement into their life. And actually, I want to share a story of one client who that was one of her first focus areas when we started working together. She really wanted to bring more movement into her day-to-day life. And she shared, she started with trying Pilates, and she had all the gear, she had the mat and everything, and she researched some YouTube videos and did it here and there, but it really wasn't sticking. It wasn't becoming a habit. You could just tell she was not enjoying herself. And so we worked with that and a couple of other things, and over the time, really interestingly, she shared things that she loves and ways that she loves to move, one of which is Zumba, which is a dance kind of workout, and the other is walking out in nature. And specifically, there was a really special place that she loved to go to, whether it was with her partner or without, and go to the duck pond and visit the ducks and kind of just really enjoy that. So as soon as she identified these types of movement that truly light her up from inside, all of a sudden, her ability to bring movement into her day-to-day routine like skyrocketed. Yes, of course, there were still adjustments and, like habit building and shifting. Like, we are human beings. We have these big brains that do a lot of thinking and a lot of overthinking for us, right? Otherwise, we wouldn't be overwhelmed and stressed out all the time. So yeah, of course, there was still some habit building, but it became much easier when she found things that she enjoyed. So if there's like one thing you take away from today's episode, I hope that it is this: find movement that brings you joy. Like, find movement that lights you up, because we all know, right? Like, it's important to move our body. I'm pretty sure I'm preaching to the converted here, that you understand it is good for you, right? Like, the doctors tell you about it, the media tell you about it, everyone tells you about it. But like, let's just like take a step back and understand the why. Like, our bodies are made to move. Like, literally, if you look at the way we are anatomically structured and built, you can see that our bodies weren't built to be sitting at a desk for 8 hours a day and then blopping on the couch. Like, what a waste of potential. I'm sorry. I'm just going to call it for what it is. Like, our bodies are so incredible. We can do such great things with them, and we can feel incredible. It just takes a little bit of effort. And I tell you what, and I told this actually to the same client as well, an object in motion stays in motion. So the hardest part is starting. The hardest part is getting out the door. It's getting in the car. It's getting off the couch. It's putting the runners on. And I know it because I've been there, guys. Like, I used to train for marathons, which involved running pretty much every single day. It involved going out on like 20 plus K runs on the weekend. Like, who does that? What an idiot. No, I'm kidding. Like, it was great. But of course, I also didn't feel like it, right? And I knew that it just took that first step. Sometimes I was like, okay, I'll just go out, and if I really don't feel like it after 1K, I can turn around and go home. But like, it just took that first step. And then once you're in motion, you stay in motion. So I just wanted to share this because, yeah, it is hard. It is hard, especially if you haven't moved for a while. Like, Cam and I went to the gym yesterday, and he hadn't been to the gym in ages. His body is sore as shit today. I understand that because his muscles are like, whoa, my God, what just happened? Even though he like used way less weight than usual. And I think he did like less reps, right? But like, still, of course, if something's new or it's been a while or you're moving it in a different way, you're gonna feel a bit strange and there will be resistance. That's just the nature of the game. So if you have been trying to get more movement into your day-to-day routine and you're kind of looking at people out there who are doing it and you're like, oh, that's easy for you to say because you're this and that. It's like, actually, no, I have the same resistance. I have the same blocks. I have the same laziness that comes up, but how I respond to that is probably different. And that is because I have found movement that brings me joy. So back to the why. If I haven't convinced you by now that like we are built to move, think about the fact that our bodies are literally like up to 70% water, right? Like I still just find that so fascinating that we are up to 70% water. And what happens to water that stays stuck in a pond? That's got no flow in it. There's disease, bacteria. It's yucky. It's like dead, right? Like, so don't you think that the reason that all of water is in flow, right? The ocean tides, the waves, the rivers, all kind of mobile bodies of water are healthy. And so if we are mostly water, then if we stay stuck, then we also are then perpetrating an environment which can be the great breeding ground for disease and ailments and illnesses, right? So we need to continue to move so that we can move through the stuff in our body, but also things that come up. So you are here most likely because you are stressed, overwhelmed, overworked, burnt out, or You're like one of my family and friends, and you really love me. And for that, I really appreciate you. Either way, if you are here, you have probably experienced a lot of stress, right? And movement is an incredible coping tool for stress. It is an incredible tool for boosting energy. So like, I'm sure you would have had that experience, or if you haven't, you've heard of someone who had that experience, who like didn't feel like it, and you're like, oh, I could just stay on the couch for like the rest of the day, and I don't want to move, and I don't want to do anything ever again. And then you somehow like manage to find that motivation and get out there, and then you do the movement, and then afterwards you're like, oh, I feel so alive and so awake, and I feel so great, and like the endorphins are going through, right? Like the happiness hormones, and the energy is just like, because you brought some fresh oomph into your body, right? Like that is why movement is so important. And of course, there's all the other health benefits, but look, that's not what we're talking about here today. What we are talking about here is finding your movement. So what if I told you that your regular form of exercise didn't have to be the traditional running, weightlifting, CrossFit, biking, rowing that you see out there? Like, what if I told you that there's any kind of movement that brings you joy that counts? So here's an example. For a really long time, I used to discount anything that wasn't like a traditional kind of movement. And that's actually also part of the reasons why I didn't do many of the things that bring me joy, because I was just like, oh, well, no, because unless I've like clocked these calories on the treadmill, it doesn't count, right? So what are some examples of movement that are a little bit less traditional that could still count? Well, cleaning the house. Like maybe you don't really enjoy it, but hey, like on a day where you've cleaned the house, man, you have done a workout. I don't know about you, but like I am zonked after I've cleaned the house. So that's a big one. Dancing. I mean, like games, right? Like badminton, pickleball, tennis, volleyball, basketball, swimming, even like out in the ocean, running around playing with the kids at the playground or at the beach, or skating at the skate park, rollerblading, yoga. Obviously, I did a big episode on yoga just before, so I didn't want to kind of make this all about yoga again. But yeah, there's just like, oh my gosh, the list is never ending, right? Like there are any way that you move your body that gets you off your ass and gets you moving counts. Okay. So please stop being like, oh no, well, I need to go to the gym and I need to make sure I do the 15 reps of the biceps curls and then I go to the chest press, and like, yeah, sure. If that's your jam, go for it. But like, if that makes you deflate and freaking like, ugh, then that's probably not where you should start. Now, on that note though, I do want to stress that, look, meet yourself where you are, right? Like if you're not moving your body right now, then at least just start to incorporate a little bit more that brings you joy, because that's where we want to start. Then once you've got that routine, like once that becomes a habit, and here's the thing, like motivation isn't enough, because motivation is finite. And this is why coaching is so important, right? It's like, I help people build long-term, sustainable, transformative habits so that they don't need to come back. Like, I know I've done my job right when a client finishes up with me and they're like, cool, thanks. Like, see you when I see you, but they don't need to come back because I give them the tools so that they are equipped for success for the rest of their life. And so if you are relying on motivation to get your butt off the couch, that might work for a short time, but it is not sustainable. It's just going to get you back on the couch and not moving again. So really find what brings you joy. Like that is a really great tip, and that will make it easier for you to build that habit. If you need help, obviously get help. But that would be where I would start. Then once it's truly a habit, and let me tell you something, like it's not really a habit until it's a way of life, right? Like, you know, something's like truly part of your lifestyle when you're like on holiday and you're like, okay, where can I, like I travel with my yoga mat, for example. So I know my yoga mat fits exactly in a specific spot in my suitcase, and that is a specific spot in my suitcase that is always reserved for my yoga mat. Because I don't need a gym. I just bring my own with me, right? Like if I've got my mat, I'm happy. I know other people who are like, cool, if I'm traveling, I'm going to book that hotel and I'm going to make sure that the hotel has got a gym, or I want to make sure I've got access to a running track, or blah, 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 right? Like that's when you know the habit's so ingrained, when you like build your life around it almost, rather than having to have that ongoing conscious effort. So once you're in that space with your movement practice, then you can evolve to the next step. And that is where you really make sure that you have your dessert menu. I don't know why that analogy just came. No, not a dessert menu, just like your menu of specific kinds of movement, which all play a specific role. So ideally in your joyful movement repertoire, you have 3 kinds of movement. There is cardiovascular activity. So for the heart, right? For our heart health, it is so incredibly important. It is something that just gets our aerobic activity going. It raises the heart rate. It gets us to use our lungs a little bit more. It gets us into that elevated heart rate state. That's one area. And I'll give a few examples of each of those in just a moment. The second area that's really important to weave in is strength. So yes, you do want some kind of strength-based exercise. So for those of you who maybe like really don't enjoy strength exercises, this might be the area where you need a little bit more support to really create a more sustainable way forward and have that habit built up over time. But it is crucial. And I'll share again a little bit more about why in just a moment. And then we've got mobility as well. So mobility being in the sense of like flexibility, balance, being able to move freely. And again, there are specific types that fall under that umbrella. So we've got cardiovascular or heart, strength, and mobility. Why heart? I think I've already spoken to that, right? Like heart health, our lungs, enhancing our lung capacity, keeping all of the apparatus here in our upper body kind of young and healthy and functional. And then why strength? Incredibly important for us to be able to go about our day-to-day life, right? Like our muscles are so critically important for us to be able to do things like get up off the couch, pun intended, kind of. But also they, play such an incredible role in things like hormone stabilization, and especially as our bodies age, especially if you're a woman, especially if you're peri or menopausal, you need to make sure that you have strength training because it's really important for your ongoing health and well-being. And then why mobility? Well, also because it really impacts your quality of life, right? So like, I'm sure you've probably seen someone who like drops something and they can't pick it up. Or here's a really great example. One of my students at yoga, like they were a private client for a little while. And a few weeks after practicing regularly with me every week, they're like, oh my gosh. And they were standing on one leg and putting their sock on. And like, I can't remember the last time that I put my sock on while standing. Like I've always had to sit down. Like, so that's mobility. That's a balance and flexibility and just, the ability to move your body freely in your day-to-day life and also prevent injury. Like that's where strength and mobility also really come into play because if you're strong, you will naturally be able to resist more disruptions that come your way as life does. However, also if your mobility is really good, then let's say things like, tripping on the sidewalk or whatever, like you are more likely to catch yourself and prevent injury. So what are some examples of these 3 different criteria, and what are some both traditional and less traditional types of exercise that would fall under there? So when it comes to heart and cardio, it could be as simple as walking. Right? Like, so for example, that's what that looks like in my life right now. I walk Piper, which is Cam's dog, every day, most days. And it's like a really nice big walk, like a 40-minute walk. And it's just like a leisurely walk. I'm not walking super fast or anything, but it still keeps that heart working. It keeps those legs moving. It keeps the body, that water flowing through the body, right? And then what are some like less, some other traditional ways would be like jogging, running, high intensity interval training. Some less traditional ways would be dance, or maybe even sex. Yeah, so, even that can count as joyful movement because it is cardiovascular activity. It raises your heart rate. So those are some ideas. Then from a strength perspective, so really, your kind of typical one would be the weightlifting at the gym, right? Like, using weights and repetitive movements, some kind of weight-bearing exercise. That is personally what I strive to do, ideally based on like guidelines, both in the US and in New Zealand and kind of most Western countries. You do that at least 2 days a week. And so that's what I am currently working on. I'm going to be totally honest, like I'm not perfect with it. But that is the goal, is to at least do 2 sessions at the gym every week. And I just split, like I keep it simple for myself. I do like upper body, lower body. That's enough. But you could totally nerd out on that side. Now, some less traditional ways of getting strength. I mean, like this one's probably the one where, as I mentioned earlier, like the traditional route is probably the more easier one to take, but there could be other things like, I don't know, maybe you like work on the farm and you help like moving all the fruit and stuff around, or like carrying heavy boxes. Moving house is a big strength exercise that I've gone through many times, and it's very triggering for me. But yeah, that is a strength workout. So just think anything that's kind of weight bearing would then count as strength. And then mobility wise, well, you've got your kind of standard just stretching, but of course then there's yoga, but there's also so many other ways, just like tuning into like a massage could be great for mobility because it works into the tissues of your body. And like, I mean, who doesn't love to get a massage? I definitely do. Swimming is also really good for mobility. It can also be really great for strength and cardio depending on how fast you go, but just that movement of the joints and being in water is really incredible for mobility. Think of other like balancing acts, like acrobatics. I don't know, I'm just trying to be really creative here and think outside of the box there, right? Or like what else might have you balancing on one leg? So I hope that this gives you a bit of an idea of what each of those could look like. And as I'm sure you would have guessed by now, my mobility practice is very much rooted in yoga. And I kind of alternate between vinyasa and yoga nidras and yin as well. So to be honest, even yoga can tick most of those boxes, probably less so the heart, unless you're going to like a hot yoga class or a really intense one. But trust me, especially if you go to like a more dynamic class or there's a lot of strength in there using your body, and actually working with your body and doing strength is one of the best ways to build that muscle mass, because you are literally just working with yourself against gravity, and that's pretty cool. So look, I think I just wanted to give you these examples because so often we tend to limit ourselves to what is kind of standardized, what's out there, what's easily available. And that doesn't have to be the way for you. So for example, if I were to share like the evolution of my personal movement journey, I mean, luckily I have been quite active for most of my life because an object in motion stays in motion, right? It's just kind of part of life. But I think like my regular movement started around my early teens when I joined some teams at school. Like I started playing volleyball and basketball, and then I dabbled in soccer a little bit, and I did some track and field stuff. I'm sure there was some other things in between, like mom tried to get me to do ballet, and I think I tried hip hop for some time as well, so like definitely a lot there, but mostly stayed in the team sports. And that was like a really big part of my life. But also at that same time, I was like a real gym nerd. I mean, if you can't tell by now, I'm quite a health nerd in general. So I was like studying some things about nutrition, and I even did like a personal trainer course. And I was like my own personal trainer. It was pretty cool. And like I'd take all my girlfriends with me and like train them as well, and worry that the gym would think that I'm like having paid clients at the gym, even though they were just my friends. Good times, good times. So that was kind of my routine for most of my young adolescent years. And then as I came into my kind of early 20s, I spent most of my time just at the gym and doing a lot of cardio exercise. So like a lot of that standard way. And I think part of that was just also because I was being so hard on myself, and like that's just the only thing that I accepted as movement. Like, don't get me wrong, I do like a yoga class here or there, or like go on a hike, or I was part of the volleyball team at uni as well. But it was a bit different. I think that's when I kind of started to go through some stuff. And then when I moved to New Zealand, so like around my mid 20s, that's when things just got a little bit weird, to be perfectly honest. I started to go through a lot of stuff. And while I kind of kept that routine going of like a little bit of basketball, I tried tennis for a little while, did some gym and running. There was a lot of shame and just bigger damaging issues where movement wasn't a priority. And it was, if anything, I was actually probably using movement to punish myself even more, which is really important to know that like, this is why I'm really stressing that movement should be something that brings you joy. Because if you're just doing it because you're like, oh my God, I ate that cake and now I need to go and for a run and burn it off because I'm such a terrible person, like that's not sustainable. And that's not how, like, your body's listening. Your body knows what you're doing and it disagrees, and it ain't gonna help you. Just let's put it that way. And I think my most intense movement period was when I started running a lot. So here's a funny story of how I got into running my first marathon. It was not long after like a really intense breakup, and I was chatting to a friend who had signed up for the marathon here in Auckland. And I was like, oh, well, if you can do it, I can do it. Because, I'm a little bit competitive. And so that's what I did and started training. And I tell you what, it wasn't probably until like a couple months out that we were talking about like, oh, like what time do you think you're going to finish, blah, blah, because we obviously wanted to meet up and like celebrate at the end. And I was like, oh, look, I'll be happy if I finish it at all, and he was like, what? Like, what do you mean? I was like, yeah, I don't know. Like, it could take me 4, 5, 6 hours. I don't know. Like, as long as I'm there before they close the event, I'll be super stoked. Because a marathon, for those of you who don't know, it's like 42.2K or something. And he was like, wait, you're doing the full marathon? I was like, yeah, well, that's what you said. You said you signed up for the marathon, so I signed up as well. He didn't tell me that he signed up for the half marathon. I was like, you freaking kidding me? So here we are. He's like training for the half. I'm training for the full. That's how I got roped into my first marathon. But it was really fun. It was quite an experience and quite a learning. And I think running a marathon, which, by the way, if you're not aware, like the human body is only designed to run for about 30K or so at a time. So anything beyond that is really pushing the body to its extreme, which like was a really interesting experience of just noticing the mind game and how like if you believe you can do it, you will do it, and like getting in the flow state and being in the zone and just, yeah, it was a really cool experience. And I did it again. I was like hooked on the marathon drug, so to speak. I ran my second one. It was pouring torrential rain. It was horrendous, and I still did it. And I was supposed to do my third one, but that's when I started to go through a lot of my kind of inner world transformations and step more into the version of who I am today, I guess. And that's when I started to actually soften and listen to like what my body needs. And that's when yoga started to play a bigger role in my life. And so while even these days, like I will still go for little runs, like just a couple K here and there, especially if it's like rainy and Piper needs a run, like I'll just take her for a run because she can't go play in the mud, like, and she's just gonna slip and slide, you know. So that's how I kind of get my cardio, is either through walking and or running, and then doing the strength-based exercises at the gym. It just resonates with me, you know. I enjoy it. I know what I'm doing. It's fun. I feel the effects of it right away. And then yoga is a big part of my life too. But here and there, I'll like go and dabble in some other practices like Pilates or high intensity interval training. Or right now, I'm really eager to try dance. I actually really want to try burlesque dancing, which would be quite fun. I mean, I would also love salsa, but I don't know, burlesque is calling me, so I think that would be pretty cool. And like I dance here in my space all the time to like just process emotions and move some energy through my body. So yeah, this is just kind of sharing with you like how we and our preferences can change over time. And I guess the last piece that I wanted to leave you with, and I alluded to it at the start, is that different types of people will resonate with different types of movement. So it's not necessarily just what brings you joy, but you also, whether you know it or not, like your specific type of body, mind, energy, emotion, spirit, personality is more predisposed to certain types of activity than others. So I'm not going to nerd out on this too much because that could be enough content for a whole different episode. But just for now, know that you will likely gravitate more to more masculine, yang, active, intense kind of movement as your preferred way of movement. Or you will more likely gravitate to more of the feminine, more of the yin, soothing, slow, nurturing, restorative kinds of movement. Now, of course, both play a role in our life, and we likely kind of intertwine and move between the two, depending on, especially as females, our cycles, etc. However, chances are that just your predisposition does influence what you resonate more with, but also your stress levels. So just think of it this way, right? Like if you're already exhausted, stressed, burnt out, overwhelmed, overworked, barely getting enough sleep, and then you're getting up at like 4:30 a.m. to go to a 5 a.m. CrossFit class, which is like pumping you with cortisol, and you're already overflowing on cortisol, do you really think that's sustainable? And I say that because I know someone specifically who desperately needs just some yin and some rest in their life, yet they keep pushing themselves and they wonder why they keep crashing and burning. So yeah, I think just start to pay attention to what you gravitate towards, but also like, are you gravitating to it for the right reasons? Is it because you think that that's what you should be doing, or is it because it's what feels good and helps you process your day and release? Like, is it energizing you or is it exhausting you? And if it's not what feels good, then I would just invite you to develop a beginner's mind, try something new. You'd be surprised how many options there are out there for you. So thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I would really love for you just to contemplate, maybe journal, or maybe just have a think about, what is a way of moving your body that brings you joy? And when you figure out what that is, how much of it in your life do you currently do? Like, let's say it's a dance, for example, right? Like if you love to dance, like how often do you actually go out dancing, or even just like dance in your room or wherever it may be, go to a dance class? And then like, how much would you like to do compared to what you're doing? So just a couple really interesting questions to sit with. I'm so grateful as always for your presence. May you always be in resonance, sending you so much love. And until next time, bye for now. All right, listen to this. I get asked by overworked, overwhelmed, burned out high achievers how they can release their stress without sacrificing their productivity all the time. And that is because I have been one of them. I've been able to heal my relationship with stress, all the while increasing my energy and achieve more than ever before at the same time. So for the very first time ever, I'm so excited about this. I am going to be pulling together and teaching a really small, intimate, select group of students how to detox from stress so that you can say bye-bye to burnout and overwhelm, and instead you can skyrocket your energy levels, all the while being more productive than ever before with ease. Doesn't that sound amazing? So if that's something that you're interested in, if you are done struggling with stress and overworking and you'd like to be a part of this special training, send me a message. Let's have a chat. I'd love to see you there. The views and opinions expressed by guests on Resonance are their own and do not necessarily reflect the views of me, Viktoria Levenberg, Live in Health, or anyone working within the Live in Health brand. This space welcomes a diversity of ideas, experiences, and stories, and part of Resonance is learning to take what aligns and gently leaving the rest. Also, while I am a national board certified health and wellness coach and deeply passionate about well-being, this podcast is intended for educational and inspirational purposes only. Resonance does not substitute personalized medical, psychological, or therapeutic advice. Always seek guidance from qualified professionals for any physical, emotional, or mental health concerns.